I'm Lisa Brummel, and I worked at Microsoft from 1989 to 2014. Simplest way to talk about what I did is to say the first 15 years I worked in product development in the company, and the last 10 I ran HR for the company. I was born in Oak Park, Illinois, and when I was 4 years old, I moved to Connecticut and spent most of my growing up time in Connecticut. Went to college at Yale, so stayed in Connecticut, and then just post-college moved to California for my first job. My first gig was actually selling textbooks on college campuses, and got kind of itchy to do something different. Textbook selling is a very slow-moving industry, and I have the attention span of a gnat. So I was trying to find something that would be more aligned with what I wanted to do. And the personal computer was introduced. When I learned about the personal computer, I thought, is this going to be a tool that could help me? So I saved up my meager bonus after, I don't know, however many years I was working there, and decided to spend it all on a personal computer. My first computer was a gateway computer. And I can't tell you anything else about it other than it had a floppy drive. And you could put this floppy disk in. No, big floppy disk, not small floppy disk, big floppy disk. Put it in and take it out, and it would hold information. I mean, that was mind-boggling to me. No hard drives, no nothing else but this disk. And I taught myself how to make a database, how to use a word processor, how to do spreadsheets. And I was quite happy because it saved me a tremendous amount of time. But when I talked to the people whom I reported to, they were off. They said, no computers, because you won't be spending time in the field with your sales reps. You'll be at home on the computer. I said, it's actually just the opposite. I don't have to spend time at home. I can actually spend time. And that was the point where I said, okay, I need to find something else to do because this is fascinating to me. So I decided to use business school. I went to business school at UCLA as my transition point. So went there, got my degree in marketing and information systems. So not hardcore computer engineering or computer science, but enough to be dangerous. So when I was at UCLA, I went to the campus recruiting office, and Microsoft happened to be one of the companies that was recruiting. Microsoft was relatively new on campus, but I thought, hey, this is really interesting. So I went to the campus interview. They didn't ask a single question about technology. They asked about people. They asked about consumer preferences. They asked about strategy. They asked about General Motors. So we had a wide-ranging strategy conversation with very little technology. And I thought, if this is what they're interested in, I'm interested in them. So I joined Microsoft in July of 1989, and my first role was a product manager in the Multimedia Publishing Group. Multimedia Publishing's responsibility was to go out and find content that we could deliver. The only delivery mechanism was a CD-ROM. So we did not have hard drives. We did not have downloads. Everything came to a customer via a CD-ROM, which meant PC manufacturers had to create drives that had CD-ROMs in them. So it was really an evolutionary point of the industry. Needed color, needed sound, needed CD-ROM drives. And our job was to provide enough content for people to have an incentive to go buy those. So Encarta was one of the first to really take advantage of the multimedia environment. You could not only read the article, you could see the pictures, you could see a video, you could hear sound, really changed the way you think about encyclopedias. We did an automotive product. We did all kinds of different, hey, where can you find a dearth of information that sound and video and pictures would really enhance for people? And could we get renowned authors or publishers to put their stuff on these CD-ROMs? So it was a lot of third party. We didn't generate content ourselves other than Encarta. It was a lot of convincing for people about what the future could hold. And that was the challenge of it, because we hadn't made the market yet. The pitch was really that imagine a world where the information comes to life for you personally right there when you're reading it. Imagine if you could see a clip from, a presidential address that happened 5 years ago and listen to that as you're reading the context of the article about it. And bringing information to life in a different way was very compelling because people were attracted to PCs. Every home, every desktop, the whole thing. This was a way to get it there. And this was a unique value that multimedia brought to what I would say is very flat information. After I finished my stint in multimedia, I moved to the Mac business at Microsoft. My job was to try to herd the Word product manager, the Works product manager, the Excel product manager, all the people who were responsible for Mac apps. We needed to come together, have a point of view, try to influence Apple and their operating system, trying to get our apps to partner well with Apple, which at the time was actually hard and not hard. So after the Mac business, I moved over to the database business. And so Microsoft had already begun development on Microsoft Access at the time. And just prior to my going over there, Microsoft also acquired FoxPro. So I ended up being the group product manager for FoxPro, the acquired product, not Access, the product that Microsoft developed itself. Once again, we're in a position where we all have to get along. And Microsoft is producing two databases. Now, they're two different development environments, so it's not wildly unusual that you would have two necessarily, but it's still confusing in the marketplace when a company says, buy FoxPro, no, buy Access, don't buy FoxPro, no, buy Access. So it was a challenge, again, from a marketing standpoint to be clear where Microsoft stood in the database world. Following the database opportunity, I ended up going to run a group called the Home and Retail Division. Home and Retail really was all of our consumer software and hardware, and it was our retail channel. So I had really an end-to-end business. It was $1 billion business. I think it spun off about $400 million of profit. It was global. So my first opportunity to really have a global business and run a business end to end. So that to me was one of the highlights of my time at Microsoft by far. There was a moment near the end of that time where we were also tasked with innovating in the consumer space. And we did a table. It was a lovely multi-touch table, and we called it the Surface. So if you want to go back to where today's Surface first started, it started back as a table that we created as part of the Home and Retail Division and showed to Bill and thought could be something, a piece of furniture you might put in your home. So obviously it didn't become that, but having the opportunity to work with Microsoft Research and build something like that, I don't know, what else is there? That was phenomenal. So the story about becoming the head of HR is, one for the ages, I think. I was minding my own business in my Home and Retail Division in 2005. And I had just come back from vacation in April. And I noticed on my calendar a week later that Steve Ballmer had placed a meeting. So I called Robbie Bach, who was my boss, and I said, I noticed Steve put a meeting on my calendar. Do you have any idea what it's about? And there's a long pause at the other end of the phone, and Robbie said, well, he wants you to run HR. And so I truly laughed out loud because that cannot be. So I called Steve the day of our meeting and said, hey, I'm going to be at your office by this time. And, Steve on the other end said, no, you're not. I'm coming to your office. And I thought to myself, do you even know where my office is? Because I was over in Willows. So I was like, okay, fine. I'm not going to tell him, no, don't come to my office. And Steve showed up about 4:45 in my office. And he asked me if I knew what he was there for. And I said, well, I think so. I think you're going to ask me to run HR. And he was like, exactly. There was one pass where he wrote on the whiteboard all the reasons why he thought this would be a good idea and what we needed to do and all of this. And I looked at it and there was pure logic in it. He made total sense. And I said, no, nope. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So then he picked up a putter I had in my office. And it happened to be a putter that I got at some tournament, so you could screw it apart. So he found some golf balls and he's putting them across the room as he's talking to me. And I'm thinking, what is happening here? Like, he's putting and asking me to run HR for the company. I know nothing about HR. I have no background in it, but he's putting. So then I say no for a second time. So then he disassembles the putter because he's talking and can't figure out what to do with his hands. So he disassembles the putter and then it's on pieces on my office floor. And so the third round of it, I said, okay, look, I will think about it. I understand what you're asking. Give me a chance to think about it. He said, great. I'll call you at 7 o'clock in the morning. And now we're like at 7 o'clock at night. I was like, okay, got it. And then he looks down and he's like, and sorry about the putter. And he walks out of the office. So, that's how I become. The next morning I called and said, yes, I will do this. And I said, but you have to promise me that after 2 years, I can go back into the product groups and make products again. And he said, absolutely. Well, 10 years later, I retired and I stayed in HR and, the story goes from there. But it was wild. It was a wild story. I always left the putter in my office. And even as my time of HR, he would putt in the office. But, when he's putting, he's calm. We can have a great conversation. It all works. So when I started running HR, it was very clear to me it was going to be the easiest job and the hardest job I ever had. It was going to be easy because I didn't know anything about HR, but I had 1,500 people who did. And it was going to be hard because I had gone through worlds where you had a P&L or a dev schedule or something very, very clear. You did it or you didn't do it. You were over budget or you were under budget. HR, what do you measure? So I decided to do listening tours. And it was pretty simple. I asked my admin, I said, go get the biggest conference room in building 34 or building 35. Get me the alias for the entire building. And we're going to have an hour and a half meeting at 8 in the morning. So I thought, well, if people want to talk about the company, they should show up by 8 a.m., but I'm going to listen to everything they have to say. And so we started with that, and I thought, I don't know, maybe 10 people will show up. Oh, no. The room was full, and then way out into the hallway. The first one to me was hard, but valuable, and it opened up a dialogue that I think was very important for me. So then we literally went to every single building, and then we went outside the US, and wherever we went on the road, we would do a listening tour. It was very clear what employees cared about. It was very clear what was on their mind: compensation, career development, training. And so then I could take that back to my team and say, okay, this is what the employees are saying. This is what you're saying. How do we bring this together to roll out programs? And I think year 3, maybe, of my tenure, or year 2 of my tenure, we rolled out a program called My Microsoft. And it wasn't perfect. We didn't get everything right. But it was a way of saying, okay, we're going to all do this together as a company. We're going to listen. We're going to truly listen. I felt very responsible for every employee at Microsoft. I felt responsible for them to have as good an experience as we could possibly offer them. I cared about making the company better. And I truly cared about the employees who were a part of that, whether I was doing product development and they were part of my team, or they were partners with my team, or whether it was a time when I was running HR and sort of watching over all the employees. I cared deeply for the people of the company. And, if you think about your time and you say, I cared about Microsoft and I cared about the people, I'd be happy with that legacy. I think the one thing I have that I valued most about Microsoft is the opportunity to learn so many different things. We always talk about people having careers where they go from company to company to company because it's great and they learn different things at each company. And by the 3rd or 4th company, they come back with a much bigger portfolio of skill than they had when they left. But I challenge anybody to look at Microsoft and say, you can't do that at Microsoft. This company offers you so much. And if you take your career and you decide you want to actually learn and grow and build skills. I'm incredibly happy that I spent 25 years doing that in one place because I felt like I had an education of a lifetime.